Evening, everybody. So I want to discuss the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins. I'm just so over the hate he gets, and over people rooting for him to fail. I'm just so over it. Let's get something straight, y'all. All right, let's go back to Kirk Cousins' first full year starting in 2015. All right, now Washington won the division by default that year. The NFC East was trash. You know what enabled them to win that division by default? Kirk Cousins. He dominated down the stretch that year. It was big time. It took a team that was 17th in rushing, so a below average team, to the playoffs. Yeah. Then the next year, he had again a below average team around them. It got 8 wins, and they were playing meaningful football all year. Now, and then last year, he played for such a toxic organization that, like the national sports media, hates Kirk Cousins with passion and roots for him to fail. That he had an organization that was more interested in being right than getting it right. Instead of saying, we just had our best quarterback since Joe Theismann, let's build around him. They are like, nah, let's prove Kurt sucks and can. Let's be right. And so they didn't after Sean McVay left, they didn't re-sign what's his name? Sean Jackson, Pierre Garcon, two of his best weapons. And then you look at the offensive line was trash last year. They had no running game. They were 28th, I think, in rushing. They were 27th in points allowed. They had a bottom 5 roster in the league last year and won 7 games. And, this is the thing. For all the Eli Manning apologists last year who made nothing but excuses for their overrated quarterback, okay, they would say, well, they would bring up the O-line and the lack of running game. Yes, the Giants had no running game last year, and their offensive line was a dumpster fire. But Washington's O-line was also a dumpster fire, and their running game was even more of a dumpster fire. And Washington and their defense was just as bad. Their coaching staff was both incompetent. Jay Gruden incompetent, Ben McAdoo incompetent. Both had injuries. They had similar situations, and yet one team won only 3 games. One team won 7 games. What does that tell you? Tells you the Giants last year had a below-average quarterback in Eli Manning, and Washington had a top 10 quarterback in Kirk Cousins, a borderline great quarterback, borderline elite, borderline Hall of Famer quarterback. So, now look, will I give you that Kirk occasionally comes up small in big games? Yes, 3 of the last 4 I'll give you. I'll give you 2 games in 16. But he's also come up big in big games. He came up big in 3 straight games in December 2015 to get them the NFC East crown. He played well in some big games in 16. Washington didn't have many big games last year because they were a toxic franchise around Kirk. Think about it. You're holding stuff against Kirk from his time in Washington. Washington's a dysfunctional franchise. All right? That's true. They are. They hadn't had back-to-back winning seasons in a long time until Kirk Cousins. All right, and they had back-to-back winning seasons with bad rosters because of Kirk Cousins. Wow. You're a pretty good quarterback in that situation. So, he played for an organization that wanted him to fail, and he still produced. Come on. And again, to the big game point, he did play well in some big games. He played well against the Bears on Christmas Eve 2016. And you say, well, the Bears were hot garbage in 2016. That was one of the worst Bears teams ever. Well, you plays on your schedule, and if Kirk, it's like if Kirk plays poorly, you say he couldn't play well against you see what I mean? So yeah. He played well in other games. That you go this year against the Packers, you say, well, the Packers don't have much of defense players that good. Well, but it was a division rival game, and there was a lot of pressure on Kirk. He played well in that game. Played well against the Rams in prime time. You say, well, he lost a fumble at the end of the game. The only reason they were in the game, and that game was competitive, was because of Kirk Cousins. Played well against the Eagles. Saying, well, David, the Eagles are 6-7, but you lavish praise on Dak Prescott for beating the Eagles. I mean, which way is it? Okay. If Kirk didn't play well in that Philadelphia game, you'll say, okay. So, you can't have it both ways, y'all. Can't. He played very well against the Packers in prime time, and yet nobody talked about it. So he's played well in some big games this year. Now, I don't know why he didn't play well against the Patriots. That I'll give you occasionally. Now, he's also under a whole lot of pressure. Now, I will also throw out to you the bigger reason he's there is for the playoffs. So, but you gotta give it a rest. I don't know why Kirk Cousins is such a piano. Alright, as for Dak Prescott, and I thought that because before this year, there were so many people who would take Dak Prescott over Kirk Cousins, and then I thought this year that argument, it became quite clear. Anyone who thinks Dak Prescott is anywhere near as good as Kirk Cousins should be ashamed of themselves. You can bring up stuff, what Dak Prescott is. He's a quarterback who needs a good environment around him to be successful. That's what he is. If he does not have a good environment around him, what did Dak Prescott look like last year without Ezekiel Elliott? What did he look like this year before they got Amari Cooper? Yes, if you give Dak a good team, he can do well, but you're not always going to have a good team. With Kirk last year had a garbage team around him and still was able to produce way more than Dak Prescott has the last 2 years with a superior team. So I'm just over the Kirk Cousins hate. Stop rooting for him to fail, alright, and give him a chance. Stop calling him overrated. Look, does he have some flaws? Yes, but he is a top 10 quarterback. Definitely top 12. He is no worse than, he is, I would say, 9 to 13. No worse than 13th best quarterback. He's definitely better than Dak Prescott. There's really not a credible argument you can make for Dak being better. And stop rooting for him to fail. I'm just over that hate. I mean, how come when Kirk plays poorly in prime games, we'll talk about it. Yeah, when Kirk Cousins played well against the Packers in prime time, we didn't discuss it. So, it's ridiculous. So stop it. Stop overly criticizing Kirk. I will give you 3 of the last 4 games not well. But you know what? You're not going to play. But he's also played well in many other big games. He has had about 4 big games where he has played well. So just give him a chance. And just stop rooting for him to fail. And Kirk Cousins is over-criticized. This guy in Washington, alright, with garbage teams around him, was able to produce with garbage around him the last 3 years in our nation's capital. And so just, Kirk Cousins, the 3 years in Washington speak to him being a top 10 quarterback. When you consider the environment around him, that he had generally bad talent, for the most part, bad talent around him, and an organization that wanted him to fail, an organization that was more interested in him wanting him to fail than wanting to win, and yet he still produced. Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback, and you say, well, he's overpaid. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes you have to overpay. You look at when the Cubs signed John Lester in the offseason of 2014. Yes, they overpaid John Lester, but they were done tanking and they were ready to try and compete in 2015. They needed a John Lester type pitcher, so they might have overpaid for him. Yes, Kirk Cousins overpaid. Guess what? Every cornerback is overpaid. Alright? Every football player tends to be overpaid because you're going to get more money than average Americans make per week, playing football. So, but besides that, yes, most quarterbacks, if Dak Prescott gets even close to $20 million, he will be overpaid. But yes, okay, so Washington might have overpaid to get Kirk Cousins, but they felt like Case Keenum could not get them to the promised land. And we've seen Case Keenum in Denver this year. I mean, Denver would probably they might make the playoffs, but it would be in spite of Case. And I would argue they would be like 9-4-10-3 if they had a real quarterback. So, I mean, now maybe, and I saw this on Instagram, maybe Case Keenum might have been a better fit for the system, but I can't knock Minnesota for getting Kirk Cousins because they felt like he could take them to the promised land. And I believe he can. He clearly has shown that he can. His 3 full years starting in Washington were remarkable. He had terrible teams around him and still was able to produce at a Pro Bowl borderline elite, heck, at times elite level in 3 years in Washington, despite playing for a losing franchise with a terrible toxic culture and bad teams around him and teams and his own team wanting him to fail. So Kirk Cousins, you can win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins, all right? And the Vikings they're the 6th seed, so they're still on pace to make the playoffs. And do I give them a shot to win the Super Bowl? You bet I do. All right, so they believe you can win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. Is he struggling a little right now? Yes. Can he occasionally come in small, big games? Yes, but you've got to show him more respect. He deserves far more respect than what he gets. All right, he is a top 10 quarterback, and he's the most. And, I mean, the 3 most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL are Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, and Kirk Cousins. And he deserves far more respect. Far more respect.